Hi everyone, my name is David, and this afternoon I am running a hack of PH Lee's Hot Guys Making Out, which I have called Cute Boys Holding Hands. This is a hack that sort of transplants the original game from the Spanish Civil War to a school in South Yorkshire in England during the 1984 miners' strike. And follows the tale of two schoolboys as they grow closer to one another. We're going to sort of go through the game, give a bit of an explanation. I'll sort of teach the rules for it. The rules I'm using for this are largely unchanged from the original. I have just made a couple of little tweaks to both characters and a little bit to the sort of threat mechanic to tone it down a little bit, as we're not in the middle of a civil war, so some of the outcomes are slightly less severe. So before we begin, I will just ask everyone to introduce themselves. So I'll start. My name's David, as mentioned. I'm based in Sheffield in the UK, and I use he, him pronouns. And I'll go across my screen at the bottom again. So Greg, if...
Hi, I'm Greg. I also use he, him pronouns, and I'm super excited to play this game.
Thank you. Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter. I use he, him pronouns, and yeah, I'm excited to play this game.
Thank you. And Sabine.
Hi, I'm Sabine. I use any pronouns. I'm based in Germany, and I'm also excited.
Brilliant. I'm glad everyone's looking forward to it. I hope it works well. This is the first time I'm running through this. Like I said, this little hack I've done. So fingers crossed it should turn out okay. I have played the base game a few times now, so at least on that side of it, I think I more or less know what I'm doing. I will just give a quick overview of the game first. So as I mentioned, it's the summer of 1984. The miners' strike continues, disrupting life in a small mining town in South Yorkshire. Swathes of the population have been financially devastated by the extended strike action. Squads of police have been shipped up from London to contain the strikers, frequently using brutal tactics to do so. The tension in the air is palpable. While this national struggle commands headlines and dominates the town, life goes on for two teenage boys who must face their own struggles. Simon King is a daydreamer who wants to get out of the small town he feels trapped in, while coming to grips with his sexuality. Jack Winthrop is a brilliant but troubled student, suffering at home as his father spirals deeper into alcoholism. So there are four characters that will be played in this game. Each and as there are four players, we will be playing one each of them. There's kind of an order in which you pick them if you have fewer than four players. I will. So if everyone has access to the document shared in the folder, what I will do is if I can just ask. Again, I'll start with you, Greg, as you're to the left of my screen. If you could start out by reading Simon King's like little character introduction starting down on page 3, I think, and then we'll alternate between and have a chance to read through each of those.
Certainly. Simon is an introspective, sensitive boy with a passion for writing. While a decent student, he has a tendency to daydream in class. Simon has been struggling to come to terms with his sexuality, as he's increasingly aware of his attraction to other boys, in particular, the imposing Jack Winthrop. He has low self-confidence and is a frequent target for bullying by his classmates who have picked up on this. Play Simon if you like to be expressive, sweet, and vulnerable.
Brilliant, thank you. And Peter, if I can ask you to read out Jack Winthrop on the next page.
Certainly. Jack is intelligent, athletic, and could achieve great things if he applied himself. He's from a mining family, and even before the strike, his home life was hard. Since the strike, it's worse. His father increasingly drunk and violent. He's cultivated a hard exterior and has few close friends at school. Despite being academically gifted, he's frequently in trouble at or absent from school. He tends to act first and think later and has difficulty expressing his emotions. Play Jack if you like to be brooding, cool, and troubled.
And I'll make Sabine, if you would like to read Miss Rain on the next page.
Sure. An English teacher at school. She has a keen interest in Simon and Jack's welfare. A younger teacher, she's driven by desire to educate and improve the lives of her charges and is genuinely inspirational. She has a bit of a reputation among the teachers and parents as a meddler. Play Miss Rain if you like to be compassionate and supportive.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I will read our last character for today, Jo Khan. Jo, short for Jora Khan, is the only Pakistani girl in Simon and Jack's year and is close friends with Simon. She is resilient and good-humoured. She chafes against some of her parents' more traditional beliefs, but does not hold back in the face of adversity and is always willing to stick up for her friends. Play Jo if you like to be tough but affectionate. Cool. So, as I mentioned before we began this recording, we will, if we have time and if people are feeling like it, we will play through once and then play through a second time with people taking different roles. But with that said, does anyone have a preference for character at this point? The one thing I will point out is that, as I say, this is a GM-less game. I'll obviously be facilitating, but there's no GM. Though the two supporting characters, so Miss Rain and Jo, they can sort of take a slightly more GM-ish role in the sense that they will also play any. They will also bring in any secondary characters into scenes. So that's something to be aware of. Obviously, our story focuses on the relationship between Jack and Simon. But yes, does anyone have any preferences for characters?
Okay, I'll just go for it. If I'd like to play Simon, if that's okay.
Certainly, yeah, that's certainly fine by me. Is everyone else happy with that?
Sure. I would like to play Jo.
Yep, that's fine by me.
I would love to play Jack.
Perfect, and I will take Miss Rain. So, you'll see. There technically isn't a set order of play in the game itself, other than Simon always starts scenes. We can take it in. Basically, we can, in terms of scene framing, we can just go, if someone has a cool idea for a scene, we can go for that. There's no particular set order to it. The only particular sort of rules around that is that Jack always gets the final say in what scene we play. I've set up an order of play in the Roll20 screen we're using. So we'll start with Simon, Miss Rain, Jack, Jo, and we'll just follow that around throughout the game. It just keeps things a bit simpler. Before we begin the game proper, I will just give an overview of how a turn and how a scene looks. So as I said, Simon will always start off a scene, and you take your turn. There's turn order to this basically. So your turn will be you will play a card from your hand. Your hand is 5 cards. You don't automatically draw up after playing. We'll get onto the detail of that in a second. But you have 2 choices essentially on your turn, and you have to take one or other. you can play a card, or you can pass. If you play a card, you have to put a card down on the table, as it were, and then you will narrate a brief, not even a scene, but a sort of the way it describes it in the core rules is what would be maybe like a few sentences in a novel or a single panel in a comic. It's something that demonstrates something about what's happening, what your character's doing. Each character, what they can do on their action is determined by what sort of card they play. So as an example, for Simon, with if you play just a regular card, so that is a card that is not a heart and is not either a king or an ace, any other card than those, you can, with your sort of little brief description, you can express your emotions and thoughts through dialogue, in a monologue, writing, or a brief dream sequence. You may also take some form of action, some sort of physical action or whatever, without success, or face repercussions for making a stand against somebody. If you play a heart, this kind of flips that. So you may take successful action, or stand up to someone and make them back down. With a king, which is Simon's special card, you may act without restriction to increase the emotional intimacy of the relationship between you and Jack. You can do something emotionally intimate with Jack you've never done before. And also, if it makes sense, you can de-escalate the threat, which I'll get onto in a second. These moment of passions, we'll see Jack's in a second as well, are special exceptions to the rules. Rather than you just having your brief moment of description, at that point, you and Jack can actually have a small scene together. You know, you can actually kind of have dialogue, have whatever else happens. We'll get onto that in a second. The final type of card that's special for Simon is an ace. Whenever an ace is played, you describe how the threat, which I'll come on to in a minute, is escalated or emerges. That ace stays in. There's a little, you'll see on the upper left of the screen, there's just a little box I've drawn there that we'll store those aces in so that we know what level of threat we're at. On the top right of the screen, you'll see there's a list of what the implications of having a certain number of aces out is. I'll go to Jack next because Miss Wren and Joe are a little simpler, and so there's fewer options they have. So for Jack, again, he has the same thing on a normal action, which is to say any card that is not a heart, or in his case, a Jack. He can act decisively with success, or stand up to someone and make them back down, or flout authority in some way. On a heart, which is his special action, he can express his emotions and thoughts through dialogue or in a monologue. He can take action and not succeed, or face repercussions for making a stand. So essentially, Jack and Simon's normal actions and special actions kind of mirror each other. Jack's moment of passion is on a Jack card. This allows you to act without restriction to increase the physical intimacy of the relationship. Do something physically intimate with Simon. Again, I've not copied words correctly there. He has never done before. And once again, if it's appropriate, you can de-escalate the threat. And finally, you have the ace, which is the same. You can describe an escalation of the threat, much as Simon. Miss Rain and Joe operate in mostly the same way. So for them, hearts make no difference to what they can do. So basically, on any card except an ace or their special card, they have a normal action. Their normal action is to describe their thoughts, feelings, or actions, or those of a secondary character. So, as I say, this is kind of where you can kind of take on an almost sort of GM-ish role through Miss Rain and Joe because you sort of control the secondary characters. Miss Rain, her special card is a queen. If Miss Rain plays a queen, she can give Jack or Simon advice about school, their life, or their relationship. You then I then place the queen in front of whichever of the characters I gave advice to, and they can at that point keep it in front of them. At any point, they can play that card. And it counts as if it were a heart as well, so you can also use your special action with it if you so desire. And finally, Joe's special action is on a Joker, and her special action allows her to de-escalate the threat, probably by standing up for her friends or speaking truth to power. So when Joe takes her special action, she can remove as many aces as seems appropriate from the threat tracker in the top of the screen. So we play... so the other thing, as I said, the other thing that everyone can do is to pass. When you pass, you have to discard a card from your hand, and then you draw a card from the top of the deck. Back to your hand. When you do this, you can either describe just a small environmental detail, something that adds a bit of flavor or color to the scene, or you can just take a few moments of silence, and then we'll carry on with the next person's action. You can do either of those things. The sort of the detail you sort of bring in shouldn't really be a massive plot thing. It should just be something that kind of adds a bit of color to the scene rather than driving the story forwards. Yeah, we'll take a short break before we actually start play. I'll give this. So the and I'll explain obviously as well. I'll explain all of this for like the first couple of rounds that we play through as well, just because there's a lot to take in at once. But so you always have to either play or pass. You can't do nothing. You do not have to play. You can choose to pass even if you have a valid card that you could play. It's your choice as to whether you play or pass. The one thing I didn't say was that when we play cards, the card you play has to equal or higher than the card that's just being played. All face cards are worth 11. That includes jokers. So Jack, King, Queen, Ace, and Joker are all worth 11. You can obviously, once a face card has been played, only face cards can be played on top of that. A scene will end once everybody passes consecutively. So if all 4 players pass, then the scene ends and we start a new one. The game ends when we feel that the threat has been resolved. It's a purposefully vague determination there. It's not a hard and fast mechanical rule. It's just once we think that you know the threat is no longer the threat that's active is no longer in danger of breaking the relationship or what have you, then we will end there. So it's just when it seems like a nice point to do so. I think that's like the big overview of the system. As I said, we'll kind of the first round or so we'll play kind of in slow motion, as it were, to just explain how it goes. And yeah, I think with that we'll just take a quick 5-minute break if people need to go and get a drink or Pops or whatever. Then we'll kick off once we're back.
a quick question. So jokers count as face cards.
That's right. Jokers count as face cards for the
Okay,
purposes
so
of this.
if so, if there's like a 10 at the top of the deck, I can play a joker as a regular card to beat it. But okay,
that's right. Yeah. So for everyone can play. So for instance, yeah, you can play jokers or kings or queens or whatever, and they count as an 11. That's fine. If they're a heart, then they count as a heart for the purposes of activating your sort of special, activating your special move, whatever it's called. It's just obviously they don't have any particular effect unless that is like your face card that you play. So yes, and it's obviously the classic thing that happens is everyone ends up with the face cards for the other characters, and just have to kind of play through them until they get shuffled back again. But it's all part of the fun. It kind of keeps the story. It's kind of a pacing mechanic essentially on the story. Right, cool. So before we kick off properly, we need to select a threat for the game. So the threat is as I said, something that will kind of interfere in the relationship, that will crop up as we play. It will enter the game and escalate as we play aces, essentially. I'll just give a very quick overview of what the number of aces in play means with respect to this. So if there's one ace on the table, that means that the threat can sort of be foreshadowed or can take inconvenient action with no lasting consequences. With two aces, the threat is apparent. It can menace a single character and cause emotional distress, perhaps. With three aces, the threat is openly hostile. You can menace many characters, causing them emotional distress, or potentially cause minor physical injury to one character. As I sort of mentioned off screen, we won't be getting into any major violence with this game. It's not really genre appropriate, but that's kind of where we can start seeing some physical effect of the threat. At four aces, the threat is in full power. You can cause minor physical injury to many characters, or you can cause one character to abandon the town on their own and leave the story. Obviously, if one of the characters is forced to, well, certainly if either Simon or Jack are forced to leave the town, that will essentially finish the game. This is kind of my softening of the option in the base game to kill somebody when four aces are out, because not really appropriate for the story we're telling here. So there are a few suggested threats that I've listed in that the sort of game document. So the ones here, the idea of just Simon is being bullied. The police are cracking down harder on the striking miners and their families. Simon and Jack have to get through their O-level exams. Jack's father's sort of behaviour is getting worse. The head teacher is looking to expel Jack. Simon's parents are going to move for a new job, or Joe is suspicious of Jack's intentions. My sort of suggestion here is that we start with just the Simon is being bullied one, as it's a fairly simple one to sort of conceptualize and bring into play, but I am open to suggestions, and we don't have to use that list either. So does anyone else have anything they would like to see as a threat? No, cool. In which case, we'll just use that's the fact that Simon is being bullied, or Simon is going to be bullied. I suppose it will be as our initial threat. So yeah, as I say, anyone can play an ace to introduce or escalate the threat. And when you play that, even if you are playing as Simon or Jack, you can kind of embody that escalation, so you can sort of play another character from that point onwards. Me and Sabine playing Miss Rain, and Joe can kind of bring that threat into scenes and actions that we do once the threat is on the table. We obviously can't go beyond what those sort of DEFCON level sort of gives us. When and as I said, when Jack and Simon share a moment of intimacy, if we think it's appropriate, we can de-escalate the threat as a result of that. Likewise, when Joe plays a special card, we can that will also de-escalate the threat. Okay, so we will also choose our starting scene. So again, as this is our first playthrough, I think I will use the suggested first scene from the book, which is just I don't know if it is the suggested. I don't think I've put it in as a suggestion, but the one that follows on from the short bit of fiction that I've put in there. So essentially, it's a sunny summer afternoon towards the end of term in an English class, and all the characters are present for this. Miss Rain is teaching, and the other three are all in the class, or will be in the class. So I will to touch on from the how it kicks off in the original game. I will read through this little bit of fiction that I have put together, and then we will begin from there. As I say, I'll talk us through the first round or two we play, as we bring in new rules or just explains what we do. So dust motes glinted in the afternoon sunlight, streaming between the blinds as listless heat blanketed the classroom. Simon gazed at the patterns of light and shadow on the parquet floor, the ticking of the clock almost drowning out Miss Rain's voice as she discussed Orwell's political illusions. The peaceful moment was shattered as the door slammed open a bit too hard and everyone's eyes snapped to the door. Jack Winthrop stalked in, his uniform dishevelled, but still looking as handsome as ever, rakish even. For just a moment, Simon's eyes met his before he adopted his customary scowl and made for his seat at the back of the room. Simon blushed slightly and lost his grip on the pencil he was idly twirling between his fingers. It skittered across the floor to come to a stop against Joe's outstretched foot. She deftly picked it up and handed it back to Simon with a customary eye roll but a sympathetic smile. Miss Rain walked to Jack's desk. "Mr. Winthrop, if you're going to be late, you can at least try to make a more discreet entrance." Her words were hard and precise, but there was a concerned warmth in her eyes. "And I suppose it's too much to expect you've completed the homework. We'll speak after class." So, Simon, you are up to play the first card, and give a brief description as appropriate for the card you're playing.
Okay, so yeah, I'll go ahead and yeah, I'll just go ahead and play that. Yep, it's the 3 of diamonds. So that's a normal action for me.
That's correct, yep.
Okay. And I think we see Simon just... Now that Jack's in the room, I think that I'm just kind of still kind of just tapping the pencil on my desk a little bit, almost thoughtlessly, and I'm just kind of like, I don't think I'm really paying attention to where my eyes are, but they're very much on Jack, probably longer than they should be, and just kind of tapping, and then like there's something that just I realize where I'm looking, and I just kind of whoop, and just kind of like try to look at anything else.
Yeah, and perfect. I am up next as Miss Rain, so I will I'll play a 6 of diamonds on top of that 3. So obviously now all cards played have to equal or beat a 6. And Miss Rain will sort of chalk something up on the board, and she will say, "So, can anyone tell me the significance of having to face your fears in room 101?" And looks around the room for volunteers to answer her question. And
I think
that will...
yeah, Jack is fumbling through his backpack, trying to find that homework that she was looking for. And there at the bottom of his backpack is actually some sand from when Simon and he were last hanging by the railroad tracks. And it kind of pauses him for a second.
Cool. Excellent. So yeah, that was an 8 of hearts. So Joe is up next.
Can I play another 8, or does it have to be higher?
No, it can equal. Equal is fine.
Cool. So I'll use this one. There it is. Joe has noticed that Simon is craning his neck and always looking back because Jack has his table in the back. And she has also noticed that other people might have seen that. And she's writing a note to Simon and throws it over to him while somebody else is answering Miss Rain, is stumbling to answer Miss Rain's question. And she writes on it, "Hey, eyes to the front, Hartley's looking at you, and I think he has it in for you. He's had it in for you for a while now."
Brilliant. Sorry, I didn't quite catch the name there. What was that? I just
Hartley. Hartley.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, not very fitting, but hey.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, background to Simon.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and pass on playing a card, but I think it's just reading the note, and then there's a moment of silence.
Perfect. Yep. So yeah, you can, if you haven't, you can draw a card from the deck to your hand, and Miss Rain she's written up, an essay title on the board, and she says, "Well, I want you all to write a 500-word essay on the significance of surveillance in Orwell's work, and what how it shapes the world in which his characters live. Sorry, I didn't put my card down. And she she looks back over at Jack as he's sort of fumbling with his through his bag and stuff, and we just see for a moment that look on her face as she's obviously feels sorry for him, but doesn't do anything about it for now.
And I think Jack meets Mrs. Rain's eye line for a moment as he finally finds his homework, which he did do, and pulls it out and sticks it on his table for her to collect.
Nice.
Okay. I'll think I'll play this one. And I think that when Miss Hartley says 500 words about Orwell's state of Big Brother thing, she sighs a bit and imagines that she probably hear an earful if she has to write 500-word essay about stuff while she should help her mother in the kitchen to cook for the whole family, and how will she do that? And all the while she's doodling in her it's not a diary, what's the word for the school thingy that kids write in?
Like an exercise book sort of thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. So as she's writing, big sister is watching you, and then she's starting to look out of the window where there's a police car standing.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that I think Simon is really trying his best to focus, and he's not craning his neck backwards anymore, but wherever his eyes look, he's kind of following the words on the chalkboard now, but it's not that he can't make sense of them, it's just that he's almost not choosing to. He's just kind of off in another world.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to play an ace, and this goes up to the I didn't know how to do that ping thing, but I did apparently. But yeah, it goes up to the that space at the top. And Hartley, who is sat in the row behind Simon, is just going to lean forward over his desk and whisper, "What the fuck are you looking at?" And Jack.
And as the whole class is scribbling this, and as Jack sees Hartley leaning forward and whispering something in Simon's ear, and I think Jack, like, while Hartley is leaning forward, Jack actually is reaching underneath Hartley's chair and is pulling out all of his homework for his next class and putting it in his bag, because Hartley is going to fail math really quickly, and now he's not going to have his homework.
Nice. Cool. So, Joe.
Mute myself. Okay. So I think Jo noticed that Hartley was talking to Simon, and that's her worst worries coming to life, because she's really feeling quite protective about Simon, and she doesn't like Hartley a lot. So she decides that she might give him another target because she can take it, and she will start. I think she will, when the class is ended, she will throw one of her erasers accidentally at Mr. Hartley, and when he rounds up on her, she'll just stick out her tongue and try to get off very quickly and wave to Simon.
Okay, so I do have a question about what I'm about to play, so I'll just go ahead and play it and hopefully get an answer. On the one hand, it's an ace. On the other hand, it's a heart.
Yeah. So, yes, I think this is an odd one, actually. Yeah, because I think it being an ace does mean it will take effect. Obviously, it will escalate the threat, but I don't see why you can't, use the heart element of it as well as sort of part of your description of exactly what happens.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think it's fair.
Okay, cool. Because I think, okay, so I think that when Hartley gets hit with the eraser, I think that Simon kind of turns around to see what's going on. And when Simon turns around, he does make eye contact with Jack, who's been moving all of the homework and everything. He doesn't know that it's necessarily the homework. He just knows that, like, Jack is up to something, and there's just a moment of, I'd say, warmth, and it's enough to, I think it's enough for Simon to kind of turn around and just go, you should really be paying attention to what you're doing as well. And I think that absolutely sets off Hartley a little bit stronger, because he wasn't expecting a sort of reaction like that.
Cool. And for a moment, the only sound in the classroom is just the ticking of the clock.
It's about that time, as the clock is gently ticking, that the alarm goes off for the end of the class period. And it's just that bodies as everyone's getting up and making their way to the door.
When Jo sees that or notices that Hartley isn't following her, she'll turn around and she'll see Simon stand up to her, to Hartley, and she's like surprised actually, but also like, yeah, he's doing something. I love it, and she gives him sign of this, yay, go ahead, and then she'll wait for him to come out and the others.
So, as the others file out, I think there's this unsaid moment of tension that hangs in the air.
From outside, you can just hear the distant sound of a police siren.
In the comic book version, there's a very well, all of the figures are silhouetted except for Jack and Simon, who for some, strange reason are actually have lockers quite close to each other, and they're just in full color, but they're not looking at each other.
As everybody goes out of the room and into recess, the weather turns for the worse. The sun is occluded and there are clouds in the sky.
Excellent. And that is the end of our first scene. So we've all passed in turn, so that scene now ends.
Okay.
So what I'll do now is I will clear out all of these played and discarded cards, and I will. If I. Right, cool. And one more for Sabine, because you had some lots of high cards that time around. So cool. We should now all be back up to 5 cards again. What do we want our next scene to be? It doesn't have to sort of be like immediately following on. We can jump forward in time a little bit if we want to. Whatever people are interested in seeing, really. As I say, Jack always gets a final say if we have a couple of different ideas. But if anyone has anything they would like to see, feel free to suggest it.
I think it'd be very British to have a soccer practice.
Yep, that sounds good.
Sorry, football. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, we can have a football game. Cool. So, who do we think is present for this scene? I'm going to say that probably Miss Rain herself isn't, but I will probably be undertaking the role of the the coach and sundry other people in the scene.
I think Joe might be present because maybe the school isn't big enough for a mixed soccer thing, so they all have to play together. So she's in there trying to, I don't know, punch people, which her parents will hate. But hey,
it's all gone a bit bend it like Beckham. It's cool. I will remind people as well. We're still at the minute at 2 threat. So at the minute the threat is apparent. It can menace one character and cause emotional distress to them. So that is something that, as I say, particularly. I mean, if there's a way of bringing it, in into your actions, Jack and Simon, you're free to like use the threat as something to bounce off of. But obviously, because you're describing your own thoughts and actions, you won't be sort of describing it acting on you, as it were. But obviously, me and Sabine can both bring in characters relating to that threat or embodying that threat as we wish with our actions. But we can't go beyond what's established by 2 threat by the 2 threat without playing an ace. Cool. So Simon to start as ever.
Alrighty. Okay. So I think that today, as in many days, Simon is actually I think he's standing in for one of the other players, but he's currently the goalkeeper. So he's just kind of standing there, and with practice going on, as it usually does, the ball's being, dribbled back and forth, and things are being kept mostly away. And Simon just kind of lets his mind drift again, but specifically he's imagining himself catching the ball in a really stellar way and kind of looking cool, and Jack noticing.
And a flock of swallows passes through the sky, weaving and arcing through the air above the sports field.
There's a quick little, it's a shirts and skins game, and so Jack has become one of the skin side, and is being back and forth and kicks, and I guess Simon is on his team as well, and Simon is watching as Jack makes his way up the field as an offensive player and scores a goal, and is just with his arms up in the air in the very light drizzle.
I should unmute myself. Okay, I'm taking over Hartley at this point, and he is kind of pissed when Jack scores a goal, and him and that stupid Simon. He's just like, he just wants to foul somebody. And I think he will, in the course of the next round they will be playing, he will just kind of, well, I mean, football is a physical sport, and it happens a lot that two people run into each other and kick each other when they were really when they meant to kick the ball, they would kick another's foot. So this is what Hartley says happened.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and play that. And I think that Simon's still kind of in almost this recurring sort of dream sequence, and it just keeps getting a little bit more and more elaborate until really there's only two people in the dream, and it's Simon and Jack. And then there's a moment where everything seems to hang a bit, and then there's just a wham as something just knocks him out of the dream.
Cool. And just in the distance, there's just that low rumble of thunder that is threatening a summer storm.
And I think after this impact with Hartley, Jack is actually holding his shin. It's injured. It's not proper safety equipment. And he's letting the coach have it on the sidelines about how Hartley hurt him, and now he's not going to be able to play next week, and his shin's bleeding. There's blood going down onto his sock. And that coach is just tearing into him about not playing up to his potential and how he has to take that knock.
Sorry, I was daydreaming.
Wrong character.
And there are, from the sidelines, as Jack limps off, there are some hisses from the viewers that were on Jack's team, like fans of it.
I'm so happy I get to play this now.
Ooh.
Yep. So I think that Simon saw all of this go down, and for the first time in what feels like a long time, he actually runs over off to the sidelines to where Jack is, and he sort of tags another person to just kind of take his place, and then he kind of kneels down in front of Jack and just he doesn't, I think, try to make too much eye contact, but he just kind of there's a first aid kit nearby, and he kind of takes the gauze and the bandages and everything and just kind of starts applying and just goes, Here, let me help. It's easier when someone else is doing it.
Yeah, and just as a reminder here, oh sorry, I think you just realised what I was about to say, but yeah, as a reminder here, as this is a moment of passion, we get to have a little bit more of a duo scene between the two of you to play this.
Yeah, sure.
Certainly, and so as Simon's doing that, Jack like reaches down and touches his shoulder, like he's got his knee up on the bench, and as Simon applies the alcohol swab, he kind of goes and just grips your shoulder really tightly.
I think Simon tenses for a very different reason, and I think that he just kind of tries to focus on, not thinking about that and focusing on the moment, but he just kind of like looks up a little bit as it's happening and just goes, just relax. It's the pain will pass.
I think Jack's calf sort of tightens as you're applying the bandage underneath Simon's hands.
I think Simon unintentionally squeezes back. Yeah. I'm good with that.
Excellent. I get to spoil the mood as Hartley yells from the pitch, "Oi, Benders, stop feeling each other up!" And hoofs the ball down the pitch.
Damn it, I don't have the card I want to play. And I think there's just a brief moment, and Jack pulls his leg away and goes back to playing. There's just a top shot of them running back out to their positions on the field.
Okay. Huh. As the game progresses, it becomes a bit more tough. Rough is the right word. It becomes a bit more rough, and the whole thing escalates a bit when Jo gets the ball, and she kicks it not really towards the goal, but more towards Hartley and hits him square in the chin. And then the whole, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were just a tree or something." And then Jo probably gets sent away, or she gets carded, and she has to leave the playing field. And then she plumps down next to Simon, who's still out maybe, and says, "Totally worth it."
Okay, well, So I think that I just kind of let a moment of there's a moment of silence as now both Jo and Simon are watching the game progress.
And the clouds get darker and start to roll across from the horizon, and everything undertakes on that gloomy almost like yellowy, bruisey color to the air, as it looks like a proper storm is rolling in.
And the coach off the pitch. Everyone get off because of the thunderstorm, and there's rules. When there's lightning, we can't play. And they everyone makes their way back up to the locker rooms, and there's a moment where Hartley actually like grabs Jack and slams him back into the locker. And Jack is sort of taken aback by that because, they bully each other, but very rarely does it like escalate to physical violence. And there's actually like a scuffle, and Jack, just does a really, really chest punch to Hartley. There's a squabble in the locker room.
Nice.
Okay. So since there is a squabble, I think Hartley has his cronies, right? Like Crab and Goyle or something like that anyway. And when they try to gang up on Jack, then Joe will try to, gang up on the two of them with and throws a football at one of them's head, and then calls out that they are bullies and that they are cowards for ganging up on one person, like the government or something.
Okay, so yeah, and I think that Simon watches from afar, not really able to do anything.
The sound of the rain pounding on the roof of the changing rooms gets harder as pounding off the old tin roofs.
I think there's a shot of Jack and Simon and Joe all waiting at the bus stop just from behind. And there's just still a little blood trickle coming down Jack's leg.
And I think we see Hartley and his cronies walk away and look at the three, and then they start to whisper.
Okay, and I think that's the scene over. Cool. This next scene, I will actually have actions to play, so that's nice. I will draw up my card and deal out everyone else's. So, oops, I didn't mean to do that.
Give me that, Jack.
Give him that, Jack.
Right. Okay. So, our threat is now up to 3, so the threat is openly hostile, can menace many characters, causing them emotional distress, or cause minor physical injury to one character. So, what would we like for our next scene? I have again on the second page. Actually, I've got a few suggestions for scenes there. If people want to take any inspiration from that, or if you just have anything you'd like to see, feel free to suggest it.
Maybe something to do with riding on bikes. I believe that British people did that too in the 80s.
Certainly. Yeah. So, yep, maybe out for a bike ride. So the landscape around here is lots of rolling hills. You can see like mine workings topping a lot of the hills with the old wheels, and none of the wheels are spinning at the moment. Big piles of slag everywhere, as well as the actual hills themselves. Yeah. I think I might. I think Miss Rain might show up in this scene, but I will let it play. Probably let it play out a bit before she does. We'll say maybe this is like a Saturday, or a Sunday. So, do you think Joe? Do you think Joe is going to be out for a bike ride with Simon, or is Joe going to be out for a bike ride with Simon and Jack coming onto the scene? Perhaps we can play it out, but
yeah, I don't know. Depends a bit on the cards. I think, yeah, maybe she's there, but she has to go early. She said that she has to go soon at she has to watch her younger siblings or something like that.
Cool. Yeah, so just so we're all on the same page when we start, do you think that Simon and Jack are out riding together, or do you want to have this more of as a chance meeting?
Chance meeting.
Yeah, I kind of like the chance thing. I don't know if they're at the point yet where it's like, hey, this is on purpose. I mean, maybe both of them might want it to be, but I don't think either one of them is ready to say that.
Sure thing. Yep, cool. So, as ever, Simon, you are starting us off.
Righto. Okay, I will go ahead and play that. And I'll say that, I think, Simon's been riding his bike in town, and it's nice, actually, just because being outside and being able to do something that isn't so competitive, he's able to just kind of let his mind wander a bit. I mean, he's still paying attention to where he's going, but it's a little less constrictive, I think. And just kind of turns a few corners and goes about lackadaisically.
And I think we just see Miss Rain. She's out in on the hillside. She's got kind of a she's sat on a sort of tartan blanket. There's one of those big old heavy bikes with the sort of black foam bikes with the basket on the front, sort of laid down on the grass next to her, as she's sat on this hillside, and she's got one of those like quite big sketchbooks in front of her, and she's sketching the view over the valley.
I think in the comic version, this is like a multi-panel, really quick thing, but it's a kitchen table with like 5 overturned beer bottles on it, and there's a cracked window and a door slamming, and then Jack's sort of wrapped up, bandaged leg next to his bike, and then just a silhouette of Jack riding away.
Nice.
Jo is looking around. She's a bit worried because Miss Rain is here, and even though she knows that this is one of Jack's favorite spots, he isn't yet. So she will pause and tell Simon to look over at this. There's a little wood close to this hill. It's not real. It's a copse, maybe. That's the right word, I hope. And she says, we can sit there. There's a brook, and we can watch the water flow. It's kind of idyllic.
Yeah, and I think that Simon happily obliges, and they go over to this rather nice brook and kind of set themselves up rather, nicely. And it's rather peaceful, surprisingly. Surprising mostly in the context of this game. But it's rather nice.
There's a flash of blue as a kingfisher darts down into the brook and back out again.
We see Jack bicycling, and his wheels on his bike are sort of mirrored up in the hills by all of the idle mine works.
Sorry. No, I should not take one of David's. Yeah. And you know what? Right at that point, Daniel Hartley and his 2 cronies have decided to go to the little brook because some little kids have built a dam in there, and that's environmentally unsound or something, and they've decided to kick it down. Probably not for the environmental reasons. There might be a beaver they could catch and play with. So we see Hartley and his 2 friends cycling down to the little brook where Jo and Simon are enjoying a quiet and lovely afternoon.
Sorry, I'm in all the tabs. Yeah, this sounds great. I'm gonna go ahead and play that. And I think that in a surprising move of awareness, Simon is actually the first to hear the sound of Hartley and the other two coming down the way, and looks over at Joe and says, "We should probably scram before they actually get here. I would rather not deal with them directly today."
I'm totally fine with you describing what that Joe nods or something like that, and let you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that's, well, I think that's how the game is supposed to be played, right?
Okay.
I have no idea. I've never played this.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fair.
Yeah, I just didn't want to take control if I didn't have it, but thank you. Yeah, so I think that Joe does nod, and I think that they don't go too far, but they do back up enough to kind of be away from the brook and see as Hartley and the other two pass by, their presence unnoticed.
And I think as they've kind of moved away a bit, Miss Rain is cycling by the bit of the little woods that they're in, and she's going to sort of stop and wave, say, "Joe, Simon, good to see you both. At least the weather's nicer today than the other day, I suppose. I'm glad you're both out here enjoying the sunshine." And she's going to look Simon up and down. Well, not looking up and down. She's going to glance over to him, and it's obvious that again there's some sort of concern in her expression. And she says, "Well, this." So I'm just trying to think how I'm phrasing this. I'm going to be giving advice, but I think she's going to say, you should not I think yeah, she's going to say you I know things have been a little hard on you recently, Simon, with Hartley. We teachers do notice some of these things, but I know it's trite advice, but if you can try and stand up for yourself, these things will pass, and don't let him show if he's getting to you. And yeah, I'll give you a queen there, which you can play. Well, it's a queen, so you can play it as such, and it will essentially count as a heart as well if you wish it to. What I'm going to say, this is how I played it last time because I think it's just a bit easier, is we will count, we will still continue playing onto that 9 as a 9, because otherwise it can just get a bit confusing once we have these, once we're looking in 2 places for the last card played. So yeah, Jack, you can consider that 9 to be the card you're still playing on.
Gotcha. I'm torn. Yeah. So I think we see Jack come across Hartley and his cronies at the brook because this is one of his favorite spots. But he doesn't see the 2 cronies at first, and he just sees Hartley sort of kicking at this beaver dam, and he's just like, "Mate, why don't you get fucked?" And starts pushing him around, yelling at him for his damn scab father. And he doesn't see the two cronies come up from behind and push Jack into the brook just as the dam breaks. And so Jack gets covered in all of this like dirt and sticks and rocks. And the kids are all laughing at him as they get back on their bikes, and Jack picks himself up.
Oh, it's my turn. As everybody scrambles away, there's a little noise, and a very dejected-looking beaver looks at the stem and starts repairing it.
I'm so invested in the beaver's livelihood. Okay. Well, okay, so if someone was wondering why things might not have been going as well for him, I have one of the Jacks. Yeah, and it's not a heart, so I think that there's a moment where we hear the splash and crash of everything kind of happening all at once, and Simon, not knowing that Jack's there, is mostly worried about the fact that, just making sure that everything's all right down by the brook and what has Hartley done and blah, blah, blah. And then kind of goes down and just sees Jack, and unlike before, I think he just kind of freezes for a moment like, I was not expecting this.
Dave, you're muted.
So I am, and I lost the screen with the unmute button. Yes, so a gentle breeze just sort of stirs the leaves in the trees and makes the sort of dappled pattern of the light on the forest floor shift around.
I don't want this to be over yet. We have each other's cards, Simon. It's meant to be. Jack picks himself up out of the river, and immediately starts trying to shake all of this stuff off of him, and it's not working. And so he starts to basically just disrobe. And because I don't think he's aware Simon is there, so he's not getting completely naked, but he's stripping down to his underwear and cursing out their names. And then I think just as he's fully unclothed and is shaking out his shoes to get some of the muck out of them, he meets Simon stare through the trees, and there's just this pregnant moment where they're staring at each other. And yes, we totally need a shirtlessness alarm.
I think Jo has had to leave because to get home, and she is biking after Hartley and his crew and leaving those two guys alone at the brook.
So I think that this is probably where I'm going to go ahead and use that queen. Yeah. Okay, thank God I did that right. Okay, so I'm gonna drag that over, or kind of drag that over, because apparently it would just be hidden amongst all the stuff that came after. But it's there, and I think Simon at first momentarily turns as if to like go the way that Joe did because he's just like a little embarrassed, but then he remembers the advice he got, and he heard the names that were being cursed out, and he kind of wanders down through the trees and just kind of stands at the edge and just I think he's gonna say, oh, what is he gonna say? I think it's
so bear in mind you don't have to play it as a heart if you don't want to, so you can use your normal action with that essentially to express emotions and thoughts. So
yeah, okay, then I think it's definitely him going down, but I don't think he's necessarily saying anything. I think it's still more of that like pregnant moment that's just extended, and Simon is having a lot of thoughts that well, probably the book or the comic version is definitely elaborating on, but this version can just go off of like him just kind of like staring, and it's not pensive or judgmental, it's just kind of understanding a bit. I'll leave it at that. The music is definitely intense. I don't think it's like over the top or anything. It's very suited to the mood. It's one of those things where it's just like it's probably very like call me by your name.
And we just get that moment where again the shifting branches just shine sort of a column of golden light down on Jack.
There's a full page spread of just the trees, and there's like a t-shirt in them, but between the tree trunks you can make out the silhouettes of two young boys.
A pair of young lovers walks along the brook, looks down, sees the water, and you just have this romantic music going off in the background, and then they look at each other, and then they continue walking, but the camera stays with the brook and the shirt somewhere down in the branches that you can see if you know that it's there.
Oh, I wish I did. I wish I had a king. No, I just so as the pregnant moment continues, there's just you can hear the brook. I don't think it's babbling at this point. I think it's almost just kind of, running a bit more rampant than usual.
Nice. And that will be seen. I think we'll have a quick 5-minute break here, and then we'll come back. I'm thinking, given the time we're at now and the pace we're going at, we probably won't get around to a second playthrough. I think we'll play it by ear still, but I don't want to like rush this one to the end so that we can fit in another one. But we'll play it by ear, I think. But yeah, we'll take 5 minutes now.
So, Peter, if you're playing Worldwide Wrestling, it's a wrestle cat. Now my cat's in here for hot guys making out. So what is it?
my brain wants to go, it's Makeout Cat, but
It's weird. Okay.
I know. It's well, you were the one who was like, my cat's back. What is it? And I'm like,
Brilliant. Okay, so our next scene. Where do we want to go from here? We can have sort of a continuation of that scene if we want, or shortly thereafter, or we can go for something, framing something different, depending on what people fancy.
Monday morning at school, maybe? So Miss Rain can be there in a more active role?
Yes, certainly can. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with shortly thereafter. What does Jack think?
This is such a weird position to have as a role that you get to be the final say on the scene. Shoot. I mean, can it be both? Can we be flashing back and forth?
We I just saw the cat. Yeah, we can to an extent. I mean, to the extent it doesn't cause confusion. But like I said, I am absolutely fine with us continuing a scene from there if you want. I mean, like I said, the fact that carrots out there isn't as big of a deal. So, but yeah, I'd say pick whatever you want, and we'll.
Let's do Monday at school, but I will leave it open as an option that I think we can flash back.
Sure thing.
I think some flashbacks would be cool.
Yep, no, that's fine. That's fine.
All right, I will start things off. Just simply. So I think that it's Monday morning. Yeah, Simon is at his locker, and just kind of trying to get everything in order. And he sort of ends up, instead of like choosing which things to put in his bag from his locker, he's kind of just putting in one thing after another almost thoughtlessly because his mind keeps flashing back to that image, that very strong image in his mind of Jack, who is wearing even less in his mind than he probably actually was.
And Miss Rain is sort of marching, is walking down the corridor. She's got sort of her satchel, carrying it, and she walks up and says, morning, Simon. I hope you had a nice day on Saturday."
Yeah, Simon actually thinks back to it and just kind of jostles, like, mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think Jack is showing up late once more. And we sort of, as Miss Rain and Simon are having this little chat, he's coming in through the doors and trying to sort of sneak past the hall monitor and not be noticed as being late as he's making his way towards his locker, which we've established is close.
I think, what do I think? I think, I have this one. Yeah, I think at this point we see Hartley and his two cronies who are, walking towards their classroom, and they haven't seen Simon and Miss Rain yet, but they have spied Jack, and they start heckling him like, ha ha, you fell into the river, boy, are you dry yet? Ha ha, did you get dirty? And then they shove him into the wall and walk past like they're the kings of the school. Assholes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They have those elusive kings. And I think that when Simon is finally seated in the room, I'm just gonna discard that and draw that. Do that. Do that. Not much better. There's the recurring ticking of the clock as it shows the class is about to start.
You're muted, David.
Sorry, I'm used to not self-muted for this. So Miss Rain walks in and puts down her sort of satchel, takes out a bundle of worksheets and starts walking around the room, putting the sheets out on the desks, ready for the class as they start to arrive.
Jack makes it to the class on time, and for once, and sort of gets into a confrontation with we need names for Hartley's cronies because it's not Hartley, but kicks him out of his seat so that he can actually sit down closer to Simon. Gab. Yes, Gab is definitely one of them. He sort of moves Gab's stuff to his old desk and is like, sit over there now, mate.
Nice.
Lovely. Where are we? Huh. Okay. And Gab is standing there with his stuff in his hands, and he's looking at Hartley like, what am I supposed to do now? And he is kind of like, should I escalate this into violence? And as Hartley nods, he will push the chair with Jack in it and say, hey, that's my place, beaver boy. You can come here and take it.
Okay. Now it's time to have some fun. It's a king.
Cool. So yes, you may act without restriction to increase the emotional intimacy of the relationship.
Yeah, so I think with that last bit about like, the beaver boy comment or whatever, Simon actually like stands up and like steps between Hartley and Jack and just goes, you think you're so great like that, and you've got all these people who follow after you, but since when have you ever been that vulnerable? And I think that dang, I'm not sure how to like escalate the emotional intimacy, because like it just, there was that interaction. I was like, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, no, certainly.
Oh wait, it's a king, so we can do the dialogue thing. Cool.
Yeah. And so with Simon between them, I think seen only to the camera or to the comic book strip, Jack has sort of placed his hand on the lower of Simon's back and has just sort of like got his back in this moment, and is just staring down Hartley and is like, something like, you talk this great big game, Hartley, but you're a shit football player, you're a shit friend, and you're not half the man that Simon is.
And I think I'm just gonna. I think Simon definitely looks over and goes like, "Oh." Like I don't think he says "oh," but it's the look of just kind of like a moment of shock. Like, we're doing this? You're actually gonna stand up for me? And I think he just kind of looks back at Hartley and just goes, "Yeah, what he said."
Nice.
I think that might de-escalate the threat.
I think that's very fair. I think probably just by one, Ace, but I think it definitely. I think that Hartley is definitely not going to be as openly hostile. I think that's going to put him very much back into his box. Cool. And Miss Rain will she's been doing that thing where apparently during the process of handing out these worksheets, she's gone temporarily deaf, and she says, "Settle down, boys. There are plenty of chairs left here. Gab, take that one over there." And she points very deliberately towards the seat that Jack usually sits in. And as she heads back to the front of the class, she just very, she just, you can just see that smile on her face as she turns towards Simon and Jack, and then it immediately disappears again as she starts sort of chalking up the lesson plan on the board.
And that lesson plan is no longer about room 101. It's about, and I'm going to totally forget at this moment the 1984 characters, but I know the man and the woman have that special house where they can be intimate and secret with each other, where there is no vid screen. And so it's talking about, Miss Rain is talking about like privacy and surveillance, but Jack is deeply back at the brook talking about privacy and intimacy, and his foot is just sliding forward between the chairs and touching Simon's. And we flash back to the brook, and it's both of their bare feet underneath the water touching each other. And that's my intimacy moment. So if you want to jump in, Simon.
Oh yeah. I had to take a moment to look and go, wait, really? Yay! Okay. And I think that in the flashback back at the lake, I think there's even a moment where instinctively Simon had flinched, but then he kind of got a little more comfortable with it and went back to letting it be like that. And when we flash forward to this morning, there's no flinch. The legs are just kind of... Well, technically they're an aisle hazard, but yeah. But they're yeah, it's cute.
I kind of want to decrease the threat with this a little bit too. So I think there's a little dialogue at the brook. And Jack is something along the lines of, you know, they pick on us because we're different. But I like that we're different. I like that you're different with me.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, actually. No, I do too. I guess I'm actually a little surprised that... I don't know. You're right. Which I think this is probably what explains why Simon actually had a backbone.
I like it. It's something about like, I'll have your back next time they're around. Yeah.
And while you're doing this and sitting a bit in your own world, I think Joe will write another letter to Simon, and it's just like I think she's writing, don't know what happened at the brook, but you look happy, and then there's a heart beneath it.
Well, I'd hate to end such a good moment. So I won't. Oh god, yeah, two kings in one scene. But yeah, so I think that, you know, I think that Simon actually like opens the note and shows it to and just kind of like slides it over so that he can also show Jack. And I think that, you know, as he slides it over, the scene segues back to the flashback Brooke thing. And with their legs like that, and after that wonderful moment of dialogue, I think that Simon is going to seemingly absent-mindedly, but very much on purpose, reach over for Jack's hand. Because this is the name of the game, people.
And I think Jack, at this very titular moment, reaches out and touches his hand as well. Maybe there's like the pretense of passing a pencil or something, but the touch lingers for a lot longer than would normally happen. And I think at this moment, freaking Gab probably is like staring daggers at the two of us, and Jack just like turns and looks at him and like winks at him just to freak him out.
Yeah. And just to make it even sweeter, I think that like Simon sees this and just kind of nudges Jack and then just kind of like leans against him, maybe a little bit too long. That's where I'm leaving that.
I think Miss Rain is, continuing her discussion of 1984, and there's going to be one of those things where if it had been sort of like hadn't been like 20 years since I last read the book, she would make some very clever allusion, but she sort of talks about how the whole system in 1984 is designed to break down individual personal connections and replace it with conformity and subservience, and the true human spirit is to care for other people and look after them, and that's the true way that people and the societies are strong, sort of thing. And she gives Jack a meaningful look, as she's sort of giving this little mini lecture, and I will give you a queen to play as you see fit.
And I think we fast forward in time a little bit, back to a passing period. And there's a moment between Jack and Simon in the hallway where there's actually the whole hallway has cleared out. And Jack just leans in and goes, so on Thursdays, my dad goes out to drink at the pub. If you wanted to come over. And then just leaves it at that and goes back to his class that he's already late for.
While these two are standing there and whispering to each other, we can see the other students just going left and right. Everybody is rushing and walking. It's just like these two are standing in an island of quietness and love, I guess.
And I think that as we zoom out, we see the rain hitting the roof, at an increased pace from previously.
And once again, just off in the distance, can see with that sort of distortion that you get when you see it through rain, just a few flashing blue lights driving down one of the roads around the edge of town.
And then we see this sort of suburban street with these sort of row houses. And it's still raining, but there's these two bikes leaned up against the front porch of a house.
I think that was the scene because I passed.
That's right. Yep. So I would argue that at this point the threat has probably largely been resolved, and we could end it here. I guess the question is, do people want to do one last scene, or are we happy to leave that as our ending?
I feel that the relationship has been progressed significantly and satisfyingly, and the threat has been resolved. So, I mean, we could do an epilogue round kind of thingy, and then I would be happy, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm willing to agree with that. And
I like that too.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so yeah, we will just do just thinking of a nice way of framing this. I think if we do a little scene for Joe and Miss Rain first, just a little epilogue for them, and then I think it probably makes most sense if we have Simon and Jack share an epilogue. Or you can also do like a the sort of Billy Elliot 20 years later type bit as well at the end if you want to. But I think I think that seems like a nice way of doing it. I'll tell you what, I have an idea, so I will lead off. And I think we just see a shot of Miss Rain. She's in a sort of cozy front room sort of thing. She's sat on sort of curled up in a at the end of a sofa. There's a sort of ginger cat curled up with her, and she's reading a book. And we just see a woman who we haven't seen previously come in with with a couple of mugs of tea. She passes one to Miss Rain and sits down next to her.
I believe that when we see Joe's in her epilogue, she's maybe a bit older, but not that much. It's on a soccer field, a football field, and she is leading her team in a kind of almost brutal girls' team football confrontation, and she's leading her team, and the captain of the other team, she looks a bit like Hartley, actually, maybe sister, and they go at each other quite violently, and but there's this weird undercurrent between the two of them while they're fighting, but there's also almost sparkles, like violent sparkles, bloody sparkles, but sparkles.
I think there's a like sort of a tutoring moment between Miss Rain and Jack. And she's talking him through his college admissions paper, and it's on 1984 and the institutional destruction of relationships. And Miss Rain is just smiling and nodding. This is really good, Jack. This is really good. And Jack just kind of smiles and says, "It has to be good because I have to go to school with Simon."
Oh man. And I think that right now Simon's actually a little bit more comfortable in his own skin and a little more present even, and I think, he's kind of watching Joe go at it, and he's even a little bit louder, just like, yeah, go for it, you got this. And then, kind of like sees Jack and that whole thing going on, and just kind of out of the corner of his eye just smiles, and I think he even gives a very small wave. That's what I've got.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's been very good. It's been great fun. So I will stop the recording now. So if anyone has been watching this, well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.